It was a scorching afternoon in Atlanta when 20-year-old Elijah Brooks stepped off the bus, the soles of his sneakers hitting the sun-baked pavement outside one of the most elite luxury car dealerships in the city. The building loomed ahead, wrapped in seamless glass and steel, its polished showroom floor visible through the massive front windows like a stage set for billionaires. Inside, exotic vehicles stood under bright white spotlights, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, all gleaming like trophies. It was a place where image was everything. And to many inside, Elijah didn't fit the image. He wasn't dressed like a typical buyer. His faded jeans were clean, but worn at the knees. His plain navy polo hugged his athletic frame modestly. His skin, a deep, smooth brown, shone slightly with sweat from the summer heat. His hair was neatly styled in short twists. Elijah walked with quiet intent, clutching a thin black folder under one arm and carrying something even more powerful behind his eyes. Knowledge, purpose, and history. The second he stepped through the front doors, the chill of air conditioning struck him, and so did the eyes. Several suited salesmen paused mid-sentence. A young receptionist's practiced smile faltered for a moment, and behind the espresso bar in the corner, two associates exchanged glances. Elijah could feel the silent question in their stares. Is he lost? But he wasn't lost. He was here for a reason. Elijah walked directly toward a McLaren 720S. Its glossy obsidian body curved like liquid steel. The butterfly doors slightly cracked as if the machine itself was inhaling. He didn't touch it. He just stood before it and studied every inch. The car was more than a marvel of design to him. It was a data point, a tool, a candidate. Then came the voice. "Can I help you with something?" A salesman asked, stepping forward with the smooth arrogance of someone who'd already decided the answer. He was tall, in his 50s, with perfect gray hair and a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Yes," Elijah replied simply, turning toward him. "I'd like to test drive this one." The salesman paused, blinked, then chuckled under his breath, loud enough that two other reps nearby snorted. "You want to test drive the McLaren?" "Yes," Elijah said again calmly. "Well," the man said, clearly enjoying himself, "I'm afraid it doesn't work that way. For vehicles like these, you need to be at least 25, have pre-approved financing, verified insurance, and a scheduled appointment. These aren't, joyrides." Elijah didn't flinch. Instead, he opened his black folder and handed over a printed letter. It bore an embossed logo at the top and was signed by the regional executive of a rival dealership. The salesman took it with amused skepticism until his eyes scanned the content. Referral for Elijah Brooks. Authorized representative of Brooks Mobility Group. Evaluation of high-performance vehicles for a new fleet contract. Proof of funds and license enclosed. Appointment confirmed. The smile melted from the salesman's face. "That's correct," Elijah said. "I'm representing our executive development program. We're acquiring 3 performance models for our brand ambassador fleet. I'm handling test drives and initial selection." One of the younger associates behind the bar whispered, "Brooks Mobility? Like the Brooks Mobility?" Elijah's expression didn't change. He wasn't here for validation. The salesman, now clearly rattled, muttered, "I'll get the manager." Elijah nodded. "Thank you." He took a seat in the lounge, pulled out his tablet, and opened a detailed chart comparing McLaren, Ferrari, and Porsche specs, fuel economy, service costs, resale projections. He was here to make a decision, not to impress anyone, not to prove anything, and yet he already had. The silence in the luxury showroom had shifted from amusement to tension. As the older salesman retreated behind a frosted glass door, the other employees found themselves unsure of what to do. They weren't trained for moments like this when the person they'd silently dismissed had credentials, connections, and composure that made them look unprepared. The receptionist avoided eye contact. The sales team, who had been so quick to chuckle minutes earlier, now watched Elijah cautiously from across the room, as if trying to reprocess what they had just witnessed. Elijah didn't look up. He remained calm, scrolling through a comparison sheet he'd built himself. He was comparing the McLaren 720S to the Ferrari F8 Tributo and Porsche GT3, adjusting for torque-to-weight ratios, top speed, handling curves, and customization availability for branding purposes. The work was methodical. Not performance for the sake of flash, but for the sake of strategy. Minutes later, the door swung open and in walked a sharply dressed man with a confident stride and the aura of someone used to handling problems without ever raising his voice. This was Robert Gates, the general manager. His tailored navy suit was paired with cufflinks that glinted in the overhead light. He didn't carry a clipboard or a pitchy-carried presence. "Elijah Brooks?" he asked, extending his hand. Elijah stood and shook it firmly. "Yes, sir. I've spoken with your father several times," Robert said. "I didn't realize you'd be coming in today. He mentioned your work with the youth development side of Brooks Mobility Group. Welcome." "Appreciate it," Elijah replied. "I'm overseeing the selection process for our entrepreneurial fleet package. We're building a model to promote young professionals entering executive careers. We want vehicles that reflect ambition and discipline, not just status." Robert nodded with growing respect. "You've come to the right place. The McLaren is fueled and ready for a test drive. I'll assign one of our top specialists to accompany you. I'd also like to test the Porsche GT3 if available," Elijah said, "for urban performance metrics." "We can make that happen," Robert replied without hesitation. "And Mr. Brooks, my apologies for the reception you received earlier. It won't happen again." Elijah looked at him, calm but deliberate. "I don't need apologies. I need your team to see people differently. My generation isn't waiting for permission to walk into places like this." The general manager gave a quiet nod and with a wave of his hand, gestured to a waiting associate. "Keys, please." The very same salesman who had mocked Elijah minutes ago, James returned with a set of key fobs, moving more quietly now, more thoughtfully. He handed them over with both hands, his posture apologetic. Elijah took the keys without a word, turned, and walked toward the vehicle bay. A matte black McLaren 720S gleamed under a soft spotlight, doors closed like folded wings waiting to open. The specialist who would ride with him, a clean-cut man in his 30s named Leon, waited beside the car, clipboard in hand. But the look in his eyes wasn't skeptical, it was curious. As Elijah approached, Leon offered a professional nod. "Mr. Brooks, I'll be joining you on the drive." "Good," Elijah replied. "I'm looking for consistency in rear traction during sharp deceleration. If you could help me find an exit loop with mixed pavement, that would be ideal." Leon blinked. "You've done your homework. I don't get behind the wheel of something I don't understand," Elijah said, opening the butterfly door and sliding into the cockpit. With the push of a button, the engine roared awake low, guttural, smooth. A sound engineered not to impress crowds, but to speak directly to the driver. As the McLaren pulled away from the showroom floor, all eyes followed it. Not because a car was being test-driven, but because something far more powerful had already been put into motion. The McLaren glided down the shaded back road like a creature of instinct. The engine purred at idle, but once Elijah Brooks tapped the accelerator, the power under the hood growled with restrained ferocity. Leon, the dealership's product specialist, sat beside him in quiet observation, gripping the tablet on his lap, more out of habit than necessity. Most people he accompanied on test drives were either anxious or overexcited. Elijah was neither. Instead, Elijah handled the McLaren with a kind of meditative focus, like he was listening to it breathe. He wasn't showing off. He wasn't trying to prove he could drive fast. He was reading the car, feeling how it responded. to sudden turns, gentle braking, and tight lane changes. His left hand held the wheel with relaxed precision. His right thumb adjusted the drive mode selector like a pianist shifting tempo. After a stretch of open road, Elijah asked, "How does this model perform after 10,000 miles on Georgia asphalt?" Leon blinked, a little surprised. "Not many people." "Ask that. I'm not most people," Elijah said. "These cars will be driven by our brand ambassadors for real-world conditions. I'm not just buying a supercar. I'm choosing a workhorse with style." Leon gave a short laugh, impressed. "Well, McLaren tightened the rear suspension on the 2024 model. Better balance during uneven turns, especially if you're planning to drive between city grids and outer suburb layouts." "Good," Elijah nodded. "We've got events scheduled on both." They drove another 20 minutes through winding suburban roads, then circled back onto the highway to test acceleration. At speed, Elijah shifted gears with ease, merging smoothly, eyes sharp, movements calm. It wasn't adrenaline that powered him, it was purpose. When they returned to the dealership, Leon turned to him as they rolled up to the bay. "I'll be honest," he said. "You're one of the most focused drivers I've ever ridden with. You drive like a man who doesn't need the car, but understands exactly how to use it." Elijah smiled faintly. "It's not about being flashy. It's about making the machine an extension of your vision." Leon nodded, silent for a moment. "You're going to change a lot more than just cars, aren't you?" Elijah didn't answer. He just parked the McLaren gently, turned off the engine, and stepped out into the sunlight. Back inside the dealership, things had shifted. The air was no longer thick with judgment. It was filled with curiosity, even admiration. James, the salesman who had originally scoffed at Elijah, stood awkwardly to one side, watching him with wide eyes and a tightened jaw. Robert Gates met Elijah at the glass office, where a few neatly stacked files waited on the table. "Thoughts?" the general manager asked. "We'll move forward on the 720S, Elijah said. "And I want the Porsche GT3 pulled for inspection. Tomorrow, we'll decide on the third unit after a deeper analysis of customization packages. Branding will be critical for rollout." Robert nodded and extended his hand again. "Done. You've got full access to our performance lineup. And if I can offer a personal note, you're not just impressive for your age. You're impressive. Period." Elijah shook his hand. "Thank you. Just treat the next young man who walks in here with sneakers and a folder like he might be more than you assume." With that, he turned and walked through the showroom as silently as he had arrived. Except now, the silence around him didn't come from disbelief. It came from realization. And behind him, the dealership wasn't just processing a sale, they were rethinking everything. The soft purr of the engine echoed through the silent showroom as Elijah guided the sleek vehicle onto the side road. A middle-aged white salesman named Craig sat in the passenger seat, stiff and awkward, clearly unsure whether to be impressed or on alert. Moments earlier, Elijah had confidently placed his temporary driver's license on the counter and requested a test drive of the latest model, a deep emerald green Lamborghini Huracan Technica. Craig had sneered slightly but followed protocol. But now, seated beside this calm, composed 20-year-old black man, Craig was starting to reevaluate his assumptions. Elijah drove with practiced grace, handling the vehicle with the precision of someone who not only respected the machine, but understood its soul. The Lambo responded like a loyal dog reunited with its master. Even Craig, still clutching the dashboard occasionally, had to admit this young man knew what he was doing. "You've driven one of these before?" Craig asked, trying to sound casual. Elijah glanced at him with a hint of a smile. "Once or twice. I did a little bit of track work with my uncle back in California. He's into restorations. I learned a lot just watching him rebuild engines with love and sweat. Cars are more than just metal and horsepower to me. They're freedom, movement, identity." Craig blinked. Your uncle must be doing well. He's in prison, Elijah replied flatly. But before that, yeah, he was brilliant. The silence that followed was heavy and awkward. Craig suddenly found himself wondering what Elijah's real story was. There was clearly more here than appearances suggested. As they rounded the last stretch before heading back to the dealership, Elijah pulled over near a quiet lookout that offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. The sun was beginning its descent, casting gold across the buildings. He turned off the ignition, rested his hands on the steering wheel, and let the silence settle. You ever think about how people see you, Craig? He asked without looking over. Craig shifted in his seat. Sure, don't we all? But do you think about how you see others? Elijah turned now, his eyes sharp but not angry. How quick you were to laugh when I walked in. How certain you were that I didn't belong here. Craig looked down at his shoes. Yeah. That was ... wasn't right. Elijah nodded, then smiled lightly. You're not the first. Won't be the last. But I didn't come here to lecture. I came here to change the room. And I think I did. They drove back in a silence that felt different, now contemplative, uneasy perhaps, but no longer dismissive. When they arrived, the same group of salesmen from earlier watched with visible confusion and subtle discomfort as Craig opened Elijah's door like a chauffeur and respectfully walked him back in. Elijah asked to speak to the manager. A tall woman with striking silver hair and designer glasses appeared within minutes. I'll take the Technica, Elijah said, placing his phone on the table and opening a secure banking app. The numbers flashed on screen. There was no hesitation. The manager blinked. Will this be under your name? Mine, Elijah replied. And no financing. The staff watched in stunned silence as Elijah completed the paperwork and signed off on the purchase. He took a selfie with the car, not out of arrogance, but as a record. Proof of what belief, grit, and ignoring small minds could achieve. As he left the building, keys in hand, one of the younger sales associates jogged after him. Hey man, I just wanted to say, that was really inspiring. Elijah turned, his smile warm but steady. Just a Tuesday for me, brother. But thanks. And with that, he slid into the driver's seat of his brand new Lamborghini, the engine roaring like a declaration to the world that he could not and would not be boxed in. But the story wasn't over yet, not even close. Because what Elijah did next would ripple far beyond the glass walls of that dealership. The glass doors closed behind Elijah as he stood tall in the center of the dealership showroom. Every pair of eyes was on him now, not because of his skin color or what he wore, but because of the commanding presence he radiated. The general manager, now informed of the situation, had come out from his office to see what all the murmuring was about. When he laid eyes on Elijah, his face registered confusion at first, then curiosity. Elijah looked directly at him, unbothered. I believe your team owes me a conversation, Elijah said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The sales associate who had mocked him, Derek, stepped forward, visibly nervous now. Gone was the smug arrogance from the day before. Sir, welcome back. How can we help you today? Elijah didn't respond right away. Instead, he pulled out a folded piece of paper from the inside pocket of his blazer and handed it to the general manager. It was a bank-certified letter of approval, proof of cleared funds for $290,000, not a loan, not credit, a full cash amount, verified. Enough for a top-spec Aston Martin or any other vehicle on the showroom floor. Gasps could be heard behind the desks. One of the junior salesmen's jaw visibly dropped. Elijah kept speaking calmly, his voice steady and composed. Yesterday, I was laughed at. You looked at me like I didn't belong here. Like I was wasting your time. That time is up. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for keys. The manager fumbled slightly, taking a step closer. Mr. Brooks, we deeply regret yesterday's misunderstanding. Call it what it was, Elijah said plainly, profiling. The tension in the room was thick. Derek, still standing, awkwardly to the side, suddenly found the tiles beneath him much more interesting. Another associate looked away, ashamed. Elijah didn't need their guilt. He wasn't here to change hearts, just to make a point. I came here yesterday with the money to buy a car, and I was treated like a joke. I came back today to remind you, people like me don't need to wear status to deserve respect. He turned and walked over to a sleek black McLaren 720S on display. The same car he had been admiring before he was dismissed. The same car he had been told he couldn't afford to touch. Without a word, he placed his hand on the hood, then looked back at the stunned crowd. I'll take this one. Number. One dared laugh now. The paperwork was processed quickly, too quickly, and the energy in the room had shifted entirely. Elijah noticed that now suddenly, everyone was trying to be helpful. Offers for coffee, complimentary add-ons, a free maintenance plan. The irony didn't amuse him. Derek came up at the end, mumbling an awkward apology, trying to redeem himself. Elijah listened but said nothing. He simply looked at the man and extended a small card. On it was his name, Elijah Brooks, underneath. In clean lettering, founder and CEO, Brookstone App Innovations. He didn't need validation. He had built his life from nothing. A mobile app he designed at 17 and an AI-powered scheduling tool for small businesses had recently sold for 7 figures. And even after that success, he had remained humble, dressing simply, moving through life quietly, until someone tried to remind him where they thought he belonged. As he drove the McLaren out of the lot, heads turned. Not because of the car, but because of the man behind the wheel. Confident, composed, and unshaken. A young black man who refused to be underestimated. A 20-year-old who turned mockery into a moment of truth. He didn't look back. Inside the dealership, the manager stood with the rest of the team, watching the car disappear into traffic. He turned to Derek and muttered, "Let that be the last time we judge a book by its cover." But for Elijah, the lesson had already been written. And the world would never forget the day the kid they laughed at walked out with the car they couldn't imagine him owning.